So I need to get this out because I've been sitting on this for about 2 weeks now, and every time I think about it, I get so mad I can't even function. I'm 26, my boyfriend Matthew is 28. We've been together for a little over a year and a half. Met through mutual friends at a cookout thing, hit it off, he was funny and attentive and all that good stuff that makes you think, okay, yeah, this guy might actually be different. And for a while, he really was. Then I met Alessia. Matthew told me about her pretty early on, said they'd been best friends since freshman year of college, that she was like a sister to him, that they'd never crossed any lines and I had nothing to worry about. And I really tried to be cool about it because I'm not trying to be that girlfriend who can't handle her man having female friends. I have guy friends. My best friend growing up was a dude named Jimmy, who I still talk to sometimes. So I get it. Friendships happen. But here's the thing about Alessia. She calls him at 2 a.m. just to talk. Not emergencies. Not crises. Just because she's bored or can't sleep or saw something funny and wanted to share it. The first time this happened, we were literally in bed about to fall asleep and his phone starts buzzing and he just picks up like it's totally normal. I'm laying there listening to him laugh and chat with her for like 40 minutes while I'm trying to pretend I'm asleep. When he finally hung up, I asked who that was and he goes, "Oh, just Alessia, she couldn't sleep." Like that explained anything. Like, that was a normal thing to do when you're in a relationship and laying next to your girlfriend. And listen, I tried to let it go. I really did. But then it kept happening. She'd call during dinner dates. She'd text him constantly when we were watching movies. One time we were at this really nice seafood place downtown, the kind of place you have to make reservations, and she called 3 times because she was having drama with some guy she was seeing. Matthew excused himself to take the call and was gone for 20 minutes. I sat there alone at this nice restaurant with my crab cakes getting cold, feeling like an absolute idiot. When he came back, I told him I was upset, and he hit me with the whole she was really going through something, I couldn't just ignore her speech. And I asked him, okay, but why does her stuff always take priority over our plans? And he looked at me like I just said the most ridiculous thing ever, and goes, she doesn't take priority, you're overreacting. I came back, didn't I? The key situation is what really started messing with my head, though. So about 4 months into our relationship, I found out Alessia has a key to Matthew's apartment. Not like a spare key for emergencies that she keeps at her place. An actual key on her keychain that she uses regularly. I found this out because I came over one Saturday morning to surprise him with breakfast, and when I walked in, Alessia was already there, on his couch, in sweatpants and one of his old college shirts, eating cereal and watching some show on his TV. She looked at me like I was the one intruding, actually said, "Oh hey, you must be the girlfriend, Matthew's in the shower," and went right back to her show. I stood there holding this bag from the breakfast spot feeling completely stupid. When Matthew came out, he acted like this was totally normal, gave me a kiss, asked what I brought, didn't acknowledge at all that maybe I might find it weird that another woman was hanging out in his apartment in his clothes at 9 a.m. on a Saturday. I tried to bring it up later. Asked him why Alessia has a key and why she was there so early, and he got annoyed with me. Said she's been his friend for years. She's had a key since they graduated. She comes over sometimes when she needs to get away from her roommate situation, and I needed to stop being so insecure about it. Actually used that word, insecure. Like I was the problem here. And that became his go-to thing whenever I expressed any kind of discomfort. I'd say, hey, it makes me uncomfortable when she calls so late, and he'd say, you're being insecure. I'd say, I wish you'd prioritize our plans sometimes, and he'd say, you're being controlling. I'd ask if maybe she could text instead of calling when we're together, and he'd say, I can't believe you're trying to dictate my friendships. After a while, I started doubting myself. Like maybe I was being too much. Maybe I was the crazy jealous girlfriend who couldn't handle her boyfriend having a close female friend. I even talked to my mom about it, and she said, well, honey, some people just have close friendships like that. Maybe you need to trust him more. Which didn't help at all, but I was grasping at straws trying to figure out if I was losing my mind. Okay, so now we get to my birthday. This was about 2.5 weeks ago. I'd been planning this for a while, actually. Not like a huge party or anything, but I'd mentioned to Matthew multiple times that I wanted to do something special for my birthday dinner. There's this place I'd been wanting to try forever. Really nice. And I asked him like a month in advance if we could go there. He said absolutely, made the reservation himself, told me he was excited to celebrate with me, even said he was getting me something special. The whole week before he kept hyping it up. Kept saying things like, you're gonna love your gift and I can't wait to see your face. I was genuinely excited. Felt like finally he was putting me first. Like we were gonna have this really nice night, just the two of us. My birthday was on a Thursday. I took a half day at work, got my nails done, bought a new dress, the whole thing. I was feeling good. Feeling like, okay, we've had our rough patches, but he's really trying and tonight's gonna be great. At like 4 p.m. he texted me saying he was so excited for tonight and asked what time I wanted him to pick me up. I said 6 would be great since our reservation was at 7. He sent back a bunch of heart emojis. Everything seemed perfect. Then 5:45 hits. I'm dressed, ready, sitting on my couch waiting. My phone buzzes and it's Matthew. The text said, and I swear I have this memorized because I read it about 500 times since then. He said, hey babe, so Alessia just called and she's going through a really bad breakup right now and she's a total mess. I really need to be there for her tonight. Can we do dinner tomorrow instead? I promise I'll make it up to you. I just stared at my phone. Like actually stared at it for probably 2 full minutes. This man was canceling my birthday dinner. The dinner he made the reservation for. The dinner he'd been hyping up for weeks, because Alessia was sad about some guy. I called him. He picked up and immediately started with the "I know you're upset, but she really needs me right now" thing. I told him no, tonight was important, it's my birthday, we planned this. And he sighed like I was being difficult, and said, "Can you please just be understanding for once? She's literally crying. We can celebrate tomorrow, it's not a big deal." Not a big deal. My birthday was not a big deal. I told him that if he canceled on my birthday for her, we were going to have a serious problem. And he got quiet for a second and then said, "I can't believe you're making me choose between supporting my friend and your birthday dinner. That's really selfish of you. She's going through actual pain right now and you're worried about a restaurant." I asked him what about the pain I'm feeling right now, and he said, "Oh, come on, that's not the same thing." So I said, "Fine, go be with Alessia." And I hung up. I sat there in my new dress with my done-up nails in my apartment for like an hour, just not knowing what to do. My best friend Grace called to wish me happy birthday, and I just started venting everything to her, and she was like, "Girl, go to that restaurant by yourself. Don't let him ruin your birthday. Eat the good food, and figure out what to do about him later." So that's what I did. I went to the place alone, told the hostess it was just me now, and she gave me the sympathetic look and seated me at a small table by the window. I ordered a really nice pasta and a glass of wine and tried to enjoy myself, but honestly, I was mostly just sitting there cycling between sad and absolutely furious. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Matthew saying, "Hope you had a good night. Let's do dinner tonight. Love you." Like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just ditched me on my birthday. I didn't respond right away because I was still processing. Around noon, I was scrolling Instagram while eating lunch and I see a story pop up from Alessia. I don't follow her, but we have enough mutuals that her stuff shows up sometimes. And I clicked on it because I don't know, I'm apparently a glutton for punishment. It was a picture of her and Matthew at a restaurant. Not just any restaurant, a really nice looking place with white tablecloths and candles and everything. She was smiling huge, he was smiling, and the caption said best friends who are there for each other through everything with a red heart emoji. And then I noticed what she was wearing around her neck. It was this necklace. This really pretty gold necklace with a small pendant. And I knew I'd seen it before because Matthew had shown it to me online like 2 months ago when we were talking about gift ideas. He'd pointed it out and said he thought it would look really nice on me. I'd agreed and kind of hinted that it would make a great birthday gift. And then about a week before my birthday, I'd casually asked if he'd gotten my present yet, and he'd said, "Yeah, but the necklace you liked was sold out. I had to get you something else. Sorry, babe." Except there it was, around Alessia's neck, in a photo from the night he canceled my birthday dinner. I screenshot everything. The story, the caption, zoomed in on the necklace. Then I went back to her page and scrolled through her posts, and there were so many pictures of her and Matthew, like so many, at concerts, at restaurants, at what looked like his family's house. Pictures going back years with captions like "my favorite person" and "nobody gets me like you do" and "lucky to have this one." I was shaking. Not from sadness at this point, but from pure rage. This entire time he'd been telling me she was just a friend, that I was being insecure, that I was overreacting. And here she was wearing the necklace he told me he couldn't get, posting pictures of their dinner date on the night he ditched my birthday. I called him. He picked up all cheerful like, "Hey, birthday girl, you ready for dinner tonight?" And I just said I saw Alessia's Instagram story. There was this long pause and then he goes, "Okay, and?" I asked him if he wanted to explain why she was wearing the necklace he told me was sold out and why their breakup support session looked like a romantic dinner. He started doing this thing where he was trying to explain it away piece by piece. Said the necklace was a coincidence, that Alessia had been wanting that same one and he'd helped her find it, that's all. Said the dinner wasn't romantic, she was just hungry after crying all day and he took her somewhere nice to cheer her up. Said I was reading into things that weren't there and making him feel like a bad boyfriend when he'd been nothing but supportive of me. I asked him supportive how? By canceling my birthday dinner? By lying about the necklace? By making me feel crazy every time I brought up concerns about Alicia? And he switched tactics. Started saying I was twisting everything, that I was always looking for reasons to be mad at him, that maybe the problem was my own insecurity and not anything he was actually doing. Said Alessia had pointed out a while ago that I seemed jealous of their friendship, and maybe she was right. So they'd been talking about me? Great, wonderful. The two of them discussing how insecure and jealous I was. I told him I didn't want to do dinner. I needed space to think. He said I was being dramatic, and that if I threw away our relationship over one misunderstanding that was on me. I hung up again. That night, Grace came over with wine and ice cream and let me vent for like 4 hours straight. She asked what I was gonna do, and I said I didn't know yet, but I was done pretending this was okay. The next few days were weird. Matthew kept texting me, acting like nothing was wrong. Good morning texts, how's your day texts, little jokes and memes, like everything was totally normal between us. I responded minimally because I was still figuring out what to do, but every text from him made me angrier. Then the weekend came, and here's where it gets interesting. Matthew has this friend group from college, his actual close friends, guys he hangs out with regularly. One of them is this guy Russell, who I'd met a few times at group things. Nice guy, pretty quiet, always seemed kind of thoughtful. He'd actually texted me happy birthday on my birthday, which I thought was sweet since we weren't that close. Saturday afternoon, Russell messaged me on Instagram. Not weird, we followed each other from being at the same events with Matthew's friends. He asked if I was okay because he'd heard from Matthew that we were fighting, and Matthew's version of events apparently didn't sound right to him. I didn't know what Matthew had told people, so I just said, yeah, we're going through some stuff, and I was trying to figure things out. Russell said he didn't want to overstep, but if I ever wanted to talk about it, he was around. Something about the way he said it made me feel like he knew more than he was letting on. I asked him what Matthew had told the group. He said Matthew was saying I'd gotten jealous about Alessia again, and that I was blowing things out of proportion and probably gonna break up with him over nothing. That I was being emotional and irrational. So Matthew was already spinning the narrative to his friends, making me look like the crazy girlfriend. Probably so that when I did break up with him, everyone would think it was my fault. I asked Russell if he thought Alessia was just a friend. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, look, I've known Matthew a long time, and I've also known Alessia a long time, and there's stuff that's not my place to say, but I think you deserve to know the full picture before you make any decisions. I asked him what that meant. He said we should probably talk in person because some of this needed more context. He asked if I wanted to grab food sometime this week and just talk. No pressure. Just as someone who'd been in the friend group long enough to have seen things. I said yes. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm supposed to meet up with Russell on Tuesday. I still haven't officially broken up with Matthew because I want to know what Russell knows first. Matthew thinks we're just in a rough patch and keeps acting like if he's nice enough, I'll get over it. Alessia posted another story yesterday that was just a photo of flowers with the caption from my favorite person, and I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I feel like I'm about to find out something that's going to change everything. And I don't know if I'm ready, but I also can't keep living in this weird limbo where I know something's wrong but don't have all the pieces. Has anyone else been in this situation? Where you know something's off but everyone keeps telling you you're imagining it? I feel like I've been losing my mind for months and I'm finally starting to see clearly. We'll update after I talk to Russell. Update. First, let me address some of the comments from the original post. A lot of you told me to just dump Matthew immediately and not bother meeting with Russell. I get why you said that, but here's the thing. I needed to understand the full situation before I made any move. Not for Matthew's sake, but for my own peace of mind. I've spent over a year feeling like I was going crazy, and I needed someone to confirm that I wasn't imagining all of this, that what I was seeing was actually what was happening. So Tuesday came and I met up with Russell. We went to this taco place near my neighborhood. Casual, not too crowded. The kind of spot where you can actually have a conversation without yelling over music. I got there first and sat in a booth near the back. And when Russell walked in, I was surprised by how nervous I felt. Like I was about to find out something I couldn't unknow. He sat down, and for the first few minutes, we just did small talk. How's work? How's your week going? That kind of thing. I could tell he was trying to figure out how to start, and honestly, I appreciated that he wasn't just diving in with some big dramatic reveal. He ordered a drink and then finally looked at me and asked how much I actually knew about Matthew and Alessia's history. I told him what Matthew had told me. College friends since freshman year, super close, like siblings. Nothing romantic ever happened between them. Russell kind of nodded slowly and then said, yeah, that's the version Matthew tells everyone. I asked what he meant by that. He took a breath and said, look, I'm not trying to start drama or break up your relationship or whatever, but you seem like a genuinely good person. And I've watched Matthew do this thing for years where he keeps Alessia close while dating other women, and it always ends the same way. The girlfriends get uncomfortable, Matthew makes them feel crazy for being uncomfortable, and eventually they either accept the situation or they leave. And Alessia is always still there. I asked if Matthew and Alessia had ever actually been together. Russell said that's the complicated part. Technically, no. They've never officially dated. But they act like they're together. They've hooked up before, multiple times over the years, usually when they're both single or when one of Matthew's relationships is falling apart. It's this weird on and off thing that neither of them will admit is anything more than friendship. I sat there trying to process this. So all those times Matthew swore to me that nothing had ever happened between them, he was lying. All those times he called me insecure for questioning their relationship, he knew exactly why I was uncomfortable, because there was actually something to be uncomfortable about. Russell could see I was struggling, and he said he wasn't telling me this to hurt me. He just thought I deserved to know what I was actually dealing with. He said he'd seen this play out with at least 2 other girlfriends before me. Matthew strings along some nice girl while keeping Alessia as his backup. And when the girlfriend finally gets fed up and leaves, Matthew and Alessia get close again for a while until he finds someone new. I asked Russell why he was still friends with Matthew if he thought this was so messed up. He got kind of quiet and said, honestly, I've been pulling back from him for a while now. We were really close in college, but the older I get, the more I see how he treats people, and I don't like it. He said he'd actually confronted Matthew about the Alessia thing a couple times over the years, and Matthew always shut it down, said Russell didn't understand their friendship, said everyone was just jealous of what he and Alessia had. Then Russell said something that really stuck with me. He said Matthew isn't a bad guy in like a villain way. He genuinely believes he's not doing anything wrong. In his head, Alessia is his best friend, and whoever he's dating should just accept that. He doesn't see how it's unfair because to him the girlfriends are being irrational. He's convinced himself that what he has with Alessia is normal, and everyone else is the problem. I asked about the necklace, told Russell the whole story about how Matthew showed it to me, said it was sold out, and then Alessia was wearing it on my birthday. Russell just shook his head and said, yeah, that tracks. He said Matthew has always done stuff like that for Alessia, big gestures, expensive gifts, things that would make any girlfriend uncomfortable if they knew. And when the girlfriends find out, Matthew always has some explanation for why it's not what it looks like. We talked for almost 2 hours. Russell told me about the other girlfriends he'd watched go through this same cycle. One of them, a girl named Vera, had dated Matthew for almost 2 years, and Russell said by the end she was constantly apologizing for having feelings, constantly second-guessing herself, constantly being told she was too jealous or too needy. She finally left after she found out Matthew had taken Alessia to meet his parents before he'd ever brought Vera to meet them. 2 years together, and Alessia had already been to family Thanksgiving and Christmas while Vera was still waiting for an invitation. That one hit me hard because Matthew still hadn't brought me to meet his family. 1.5 years, and I'd never been to a single family event. He always had reasons. His mom was going through stuff, his dad was hard to deal with, the timing wasn't right. But apparently the timing was right for Alessia years ago. The next day I texted Matthew and said we needed to talk. He immediately called me and was all cheerful, asking if I was finally done being mad at him. I told him I wasn't mad, I just needed to have an honest conversation about some things, and he got kind of quiet and said, okay, let's talk tonight. He came over to my place around 7, brought flowers, which honestly just annoyed me because it felt like he was trying to smooth things over without actually addressing anything. I put them in water because I'm not about to let flowers die, but I made it clear I wasn't impressed. We sat on my couch and I told him I needed him to be completely honest with me about Alessia, not the version he'd been telling me for 1.5 years, but the actual truth. He got this look on his face like he was bracing himself and asked what I was talking about. I asked him point blank if he and Alessia had ever hooked up. He didn't answer right away, which was already an answer. Then he started doing this thing where he was trying to figure out what I knew before committing to a response. Asked me why I was asking, where this was coming from, who I'd been talking to. I told him it didn't matter where it was coming from. I was asking him directly, and I wanted a direct answer. Had he and Alessia ever been physical? He finally said, okay, yes, a long time ago before we were together, they'd had a thing, but it was years ago and it didn't mean anything, and it was over before he even met me. Said he didn't tell me because he knew I'd react exactly like this and make it into something it wasn't. I asked him to define a long time ago. He got uncomfortable and said, I don't know, like 3 years ago, maybe 4. I asked if that was the only time. He said yes. I asked if he was sure about that. He said yes again. But he wouldn't look at me. I told him I didn't believe him. Told him I knew there had been multiple times over the years, that their friendship had never been just friendship, that he'd been lying to me since the beginning. He started getting frustrated and asked who told me all this, and I said it didn't matter, because what mattered was whether it was true. He stood up and started pacing around my living room, said this was ridiculous, that I was letting other people poison me against him, that whoever was telling me this stuff was jealous, or had their own agenda. Asked if it was Russell because Russell had always had a thing against Alessia for no reason. I asked why Russell would lie about something like this. Matthew said because Russell has always been weird about their friend group dynamics, always trying to stir up drama, always wanting to be the moral authority on everything. I told Matthew to stop deflecting and answer my question. Had he hooked up with Alessia more than once over the years? Yes or no? He finally stopped pacing and looked at me and said, fine, yes. Okay, there were a couple times after college when they were both single and things happened, but it was never when he was in a relationship. He would never do that to someone he was with. He said Alessia was important to him and sometimes their friendship got complicated, but he had never cheated, and he never would. I asked about the necklace. He immediately started with the she bought it herself thing again, and I cut him off and said, Matthew, I saw your credit card statement. I didn't actually see his credit card statement, but I wanted to see how he'd react. He kind of froze for a second and then said, okay, fine, yes, he bought her the necklace, but it was because she was going through a hard time, and he wanted to cheer her up, and it wasn't like he'd bought it instead of getting me something. He'd gotten me something too. I asked what he got me. He said he got me earrings. I asked where they were since I never received them. He said he was going to give them to me at dinner, but I went alone, and then we were fighting, and he never got the chance. So somewhere in his apartment was a pair of earrings that were supposed to be my birthday present, but I got nothing, while Alessia got the necklace I actually wanted. I told him that was incredibly messed up. He said I was making it into a bigger deal than it needed to be. Said the necklace cost the same as the earrings, so it's not like he spent more on Alessia than me. He just got her what she wanted and me what he thought I'd like that was the point. I asked him why Alessia's happiness on my birthday was his responsibility. Why comforting her through a breakup meant canceling our dinner plans. Why cheering her up meant buying her expensive jewelry. Why she always came first. He said she didn't always come first and I was exaggerating. I started listing examples. The 2 a.m. phone calls he always answered. The dinner dates he'd interrupted to talk to her. The Saturday mornings she spent at his apartment in his clothes. The key she had to his place when I didn't have one. His family events she'd attended when I'd never been invited. The birthday dinner he canceled. The necklace he bought her. He tried to explain each one individually. The phone calls were because she had anxiety and calling someone helped her calm down. The interrupted dinners were because she was going through stuff and he couldn't just ignore her. The Saturday mornings were because her roommate situation was bad and she needed somewhere to go. The key was from years ago, and it would be weird to ask for it back now. The family events were because his family already knew her, so it was easier. The birthday dinner was a one-time thing and he said he was sorry. The necklace was a mistake and he should have thought about how it would look. Every single excuse was about how I should understand, how I should be more flexible, how Alessia's needs were valid and I was just being difficult. Not once did he acknowledge that maybe he was the one in the wrong. Not once did he say I should have put you first, or I see why this hurt you, or I'll do better. Just excuse after excuse after excuse. I finally told him I was done. Done with the excuses, done with being made to feel crazy, done with coming second to someone who he swore was just a friend. I told him we were over. He literally laughed. Not like a mean laugh, but like an "are you serious" laugh. Asked if I was really breaking up with him over Alessia again. Said I was proving everyone right who said I was too jealous to handle their friendship. Said he'd told Alessia this would probably happen, and she'd said maybe I just wasn't the right person for him if I couldn't accept something that was never going to change. So they'd discussed me. They'd discussed the possibility of me breaking up with him over her. And Alessia's response was that I wasn't the right person if I couldn't deal with it. Not that maybe Matthew should set better boundaries. Not that maybe he should prioritize his girlfriend. Just that I was the problem. I told him to get out. He said I was being dramatic and we should talk about this when I'd calmed down. I told him there was nothing to talk about and I needed him to leave my apartment. He stared at me for a second like he was trying to figure out if I was serious, and then he picked up his jacket and said, "Fine. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable." He left and I sat on my couch for like an hour just decompressing. Then I texted Grace and told her what happened, and she called me immediately and we talked until almost midnight. She was proud of me for finally ending it. Said she'd been worried about me for months and was glad I was getting out. The next few days were weird. Matthew texted me twice, acting like nothing had happened. First text was, "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're having a good day." Second text was, "Do you want to grab dinner this weekend? We should talk." Like he genuinely thought we were still together or that I was going to change my mind. I didn't respond to either one. Then on Friday, Russell texted me asking how I was doing. Said he'd heard through the group chat that Matthew was telling everyone I'd dumped him out of nowhere because I was jealous of Alessia. I told Russell that sounded about right. He asked if I wanted to hang out that weekend, totally casual, just to decompress and talk about stuff that wasn't Matthew drama. I said yes. We ended up spending most of Saturday together. Started with brunch at this place near downtown, then walked around for a while, got ice cream, sat in a park, and just talked. Not about Matthew really, about other stuff. Life and family and what we wanted to do in the next few years and music and random things. It was really nice, actually. Easy in a way that things with Matthew hadn't been easy in a long time. Russell walked me to my car at the end of the day and said he'd had a really good time and asked if I wanted to do it again sometime. I said I'd like that. Now here's where I need your help, Reddit, because I don't know if I'm being stupid or not. I know Russell is Matthew's friend. I know there's like a bro code or whatever, and maybe getting involved with Russell is messy given the whole situation, but also Matthew doesn't deserve my consideration after how he treated me. And Russell has been nothing but kind and honest. And he's the only one from that whole friend group who actually told me the truth when everyone else was letting Matthew treat me like garbage. I'm not trying to rush into anything, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested. And Russell seems interested too. He's been texting me every day since Saturday, not in a pushy way, just checking in and sending me funny stuff and asking about my day. Matthew still hasn't figured out we've been talking. He's still texting me occasionally trying to get me to respond. His latest one said I talked to Alessia, and she says you clearly have issues with female friendships in general, and maybe you should work on that before getting into another relationship. The audacity. Alessia is now giving him relationship advice about me. I can't even. So what do? Do I keep talking to Russell and see where it goes? Do I tell Matthew we've been hanging out? Do I just ignore Matthew completely and let him find out on his own? Part of me wants to post a picture with Russell just to see Matthew's reaction. But another part of me thinks that's petty and I should be bigger than that. But another part of me thinks Matthew deserves to feel exactly what I felt when I saw that Instagram story of him and Alessia on my birthday. We'll update again when there's more to tell. Final update. After my last post, a lot of you told me to just go for it with Russell and stop worrying about Matthew's feelings. And honestly, you were right. Russell and I kept hanging out and it was really nice. Easy. No weird tension. No feeling like I was competing with another woman for attention. No walking on eggshells worried I was being too jealous or too needy. Just two people actually enjoying each other's company like normal human beings. Last weekend, Russell asked if I wanted to make things official. We were at his place watching some show and he paused it and just looked at me and said he really liked spending time with me and wanted to know if I'd be his girlfriend. And I said yes. Because why the hell wouldn't I? This man had been nothing but honest and respectful, and he actually made me feel like a priority instead of an afterthought. After a year and a half of being Matthew's backup plan, it felt incredible to be someone's first choice. We decided not to hide it. Not to post couple photos everywhere or be obnoxious about it, but also not to pretend we weren't together if someone asked. Russell said he genuinely did not care what the friend group thought, and if Matthew had a problem with it, that was Matthew's issue to deal with. I appreciated that energy so much. The friend group found out pretty fast because of course they did. Someone saw us at a restaurant holding hands and looking very much like a couple, and it got back to Matthew within like 2 days. A guy named James apparently texted Matthew asking if he knew Russell and I were together now, and that lit the fuse on everything that came after. Matthew showed up at my apartment Thursday night around 9 p.m. No text first, no call, no warning whatsoever. Just started banging on my door so hard I thought something was wrong. Like someone died or there was an emergency. I ran to the door and yelled, "Who is it?" And Matthew's voice came through all muffled, but I could tell he was pissed. He was yelling, "Open the door, we need to talk. I know you're in there." I yelled back that I wasn't opening anything until he calmed down. He kept going, saying I was a liar and a snake and how could I do this to him with his own friend. My neighbor across the hall, this older woman, opened her door to see what the commotion was, and Matthew turned and told her to mind her own business. She looked at me through the gap in my door chain and asked if I needed her to call someone. I told her I might and to stay close. Matthew heard that and got even more worked up. Started saying, "Oh, so now you're involving the neighbors, making me look like some kind of criminal. This is exactly the kind of dramatic bullshit you always pull." I told him he was the one banging on my door at 9 p.m. screaming in the hallway, and maybe he should think about who is being dramatic here. I made a stupid decision and opened the door because honestly, more neighbors were coming out and I didn't want everyone in my building knowing my business. The second I unlatched the chain, Matthew pushed past me so hard I stumbled back into my coffee table. Not like he shoved me intentionally, but he was moving with so much force that I couldn't stay upright. My hip hit the corner of the table and I yelped and he didn't even acknowledge it. Just stormed into my living room and started pacing like a caged animal. His face was red and sweaty and his hands were shaking. I'd never seen him like this before. Even during our worst arguments, he'd always been more cold and dismissive than actually angry. This was different. This was rage. He turned on me and started demanding to know how long this thing with Russell had been going on. Was I cheating on him before we broke up? Was Russell feeding me lies about him and Alessia just to get in my pants? Did I plan this whole thing to humiliate him in front of all his friends? I told him to lower his voice because my neighbors could still hear everything. He got louder and said he didn't give a damn about my neighbors and I needed to answer his questions. I said fine. Russell and I got together after we broke up, and even if we hadn't, Matthew had no right to be upset about who I dated now, because we were over. He laughed this ugly, bitter laugh and said, "Oh, so Russell was just waiting in the wings, huh? Probably orchestrated this whole thing. Told you all that crap about me and Alessia just so he could swoop in and steal you." Said Russell had always been jealous of him, always wanted what Matthew had, and now he was using me to get back at him. I told him that was delusional. Russell didn't steal me. Matthew lost me. By lying about Alessia, by prioritizing her over me for our entire relationship, by making me feel crazy every time I brought up legitimate concerns, by giving her my necklace on my birthday. Russell was just the only person honest enough to tell me what was actually going on, while everyone else watched Matthew treat me like garbage and said nothing. Matthew stepped toward me and I stepped back. He noticed that and got this wounded look on his face like I'd hurt his feelings by being scared of him. Said, "I really think I'm some kind of monster, don't I? That he would never hurt me, that he just wanted to talk." I told him this wasn't talking. This was yelling and scaring me in my own apartment and he needed to leave. He didn't leave. Instead, he started going off about everything Russell had apparently told me about him and Alessia. Said Russell exaggerated everything, that yeah, he and Alessia had hooked up a couple times years ago, but it was ancient history and didn't mean anything. Said he'd never cheated on any girlfriend ever, and Russell was making him sound like some kind of serial cheater when that wasn't true at all. I asked him about the necklace again, about how he'd told me it was sold out and then Alessia was wearing it on the night he ditched my birthday. He said again that Alessia bought it herself and he just helped her find it, and I said, "Stop lying, Matthew. I know you bought it." He got in my face then, like actually in my face, close enough that I could feel his breath. Said Russell was filling my head with garbage and I was too naive to see I was being manipulated. Said Russell had wanted to break us up from the beginning and now he'd succeeded and I was just too blind to realize I'd been played. I told him to get out of my face. He didn't move, just stood there staring at me like he was trying to intimidate me into agreeing with him or backing down or something. My hands were shaking, but I was not going to let him see me scared. I grabbed my phone off the counter and told him I was calling 911 if he didn't leave in the next 30 seconds. He finally stepped back and threw his hands up like I was being ridiculous. Said, "Fine, call the cops on your ex-boyfriend for wanting to have a conversation. That'll look great. I'm the crazy controlling one, but you're calling the police because I raised my voice." I said, "You pushed into my apartment. You got in my face. You're refusing to leave when I've asked multiple times. That's not a conversation, Matthew, that's harassment." He called me dramatic. Said I was always so dramatic, always making everything into a bigger deal than it needed to be. And this was exactly why things didn't work between us. Because I couldn't handle conflict like a normal person. I started dialing, got to 91 before he finally moved toward the door. But before he left, he turned around and said I'd made a huge mistake choosing Russell over him, and I was going to regret it. I called 911 anyway, told them what happened, that my ex had forced his way into my apartment, refused to leave, got aggressive, and damaged my property on the way out. They sent officers over and I gave a full statement. The cop who took my report was this younger guy who was actually really kind about everything. Wrote everything down, took pictures of the doorframe, asked if I had anywhere safe to stay tonight. I said yes. I called Russell as soon as the cops left and he came over immediately. Stayed with me that night because honestly, I was too shaken to be alone. He felt terrible about the whole thing. Kept saying he should have anticipated Matthew would flip out. Should have been there with me. I told him none of this was his fault. Matthew's reaction was Matthew's responsibility. But that wasn't the end of it. Saturday afternoon, Russell and I were leaving a restaurant downtown after lunch. We'd parked in this garage nearby and were walking to Russell's car when I heard someone yelling Russell's name behind us. We both turned and Matthew was storming toward us across the garage. He must have followed us or something because there's no way that was a coincidence. Russell stepped in front of me and told Matthew to back off. Matthew kept coming and shoved Russell hard in the chest with both hands. Russell stumbled but didn't fall and he told Matthew again to calm down and back away. Matthew was screaming at this point. saying Russell was a traitor, a backstabber, that they'd been friends for years, and Russell threw it all away for some girl who wasn't even worth it. I told Matthew to leave us alone, and he turned on me and said, "Shut up. This is between me and him." Russell stepped forward and said, "Don't talk to her like that." Matthew shoved him again, and this time Russell shoved back. They were chest to chest yelling at each other, and I was terrified this was going to turn into a full fight. Matthew threw the first punch, caught Russell on the side of the jaw, and Russell's head snapped to the side. But Russell didn't go down. He came back with a punch of his own that landed right on Matthew's nose, and I heard this horrible crunching sound. Matthew stumbled back with blood pouring down his face, and for a second I thought it was over. But Matthew charged again, tackled Russell into the side of a parked car, and they were both on the ground throwing punches. I was screaming at them to stop and looking around desperately for anyone who could help. A security guard came running from the garage entrance and started yelling at them to break it up. He had to physically pull Matthew off Russell, and even then Matthew was still trying to swing. Someone had called the cops because 2 patrol cars showed up within a few minutes. They separated Matthew and Russell and took statements from everyone, including me and the security guard. Matthew tried to claim Russell started it, but the security guard had seen Matthew throw the first punch and said so. They arrested Matthew, actually put him in handcuffs and put him in the back of the patrol car. He was yelling the whole time that this was bullshit, that Russell attacked him first, that I was lying about everything. The cops didn't seem impressed. Russell's lip was split and his jaw was already swelling, but he refused to go to the hospital. Said he was fine. We found out later Matthew got charged with assault and criminal mischief for my door. He spent the night in jail before someone bailed him out. I got a call from a victim's advocate asking if I wanted to pursue a restraining order, and I said yes. Russell is pressing charges too. Oh, and one more thing that makes me want to scream. Remember how Matthew said he'd gotten me earrings for my birthday but never gave them to me because we were fighting? Well, Russell heard from James that Matthew gave those damn earrings to Alessia after everything went down. Are you kidding me? The gift that was supposed to be mine ended up with her anyway. Just like the necklace. Just like every single thing in our entire relationship. I cannot believe I wasted a year and a half on this man. Screw that. And screw him. And honestly, screw Alessia too. She knew exactly what she was doing this whole time. All that we're like siblings bullshit while she was posting heart emojis about him and wearing my necklace and giving him advice about how I was too jealous to handle their friendship. They were both playing me and laughing about it together, and I hope they're both miserable forever. Matthew's got assault charges pending and a restraining order, and half his friends won't talk to him anymore. Good. That's what he gets. I don't feel even a little bit sorry for him. He did this to himself by being a lying, manipulative piece of garbage who thought he could have his girlfriend and his backup girl and face 0 consequences. Well, congratulations, Matthew. Consequences found you. Enjoy your court date, asshole. I'm done. I'm so done. Russell treats me like an actual human being, and that's all I ever wanted, and apparently that was too much to ask from Matthew. Whatever. His loss. Alessia can have him. They deserve each other's trash energy. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. Peace out. I'm going to go kiss my boyfriend and forget Matthew ever existed.